Well, hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Welcome to your Thursday. This is Let's Talk Tropics. Quite a bit to unpack here today, but I think we'll be able to get through this discussion fairly quickly as we go through the afternoon here. There's quite a bit of tropical weather that's being looked at, but there's nothing active that's out there right now. So again, this is that great time for most of us to prepare for hurricane season. It is really a pretty day across Acadiana right now. A lot of blue skies. Last check of the temperature was 88 degrees, and we don't have any heat index as well. So we're looking really good as the humidity is a bit lower and there's a nice breeze out there. Well, let's just go ahead and start with the tropical weather outlook. Most of you have seen this. We've got that one disturbance, 90L, that is right off of the Florida coast and will be pushing out into the Atlantic Ocean. And then down in the Bay of Campeche, we also have an area that's going to be watched for quite some time here, as there's about a 40% chance that we'll see some development there over the southern Bay of Campeche. And a lot of the models are indicating some kind of development in that particular area. So that's something that we're going to continue to watch here as we go through the next couple of days. We're going to get to those models here in just a second. But let's go ahead and take a look at 90L first of all. This really isn't going to affect us, but this is kind of a refresher of how tropical systems develop, and we've had a low pressure area that kind of was over Florida, maybe starting to scoot out into the Atlantic Ocean a little bit, but it's also along a front, and there are fronts sometimes that edge their way into the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, and you'll get a low pressure area kind of spin along that. We call those the homegrown systems, and we did see something develop along the front over the Gulf and then lift over Florida, and now it looks like it's starting to move out into the waters of the Atlantic Ocean there. And the National Hurricane Center, at least at last check, as I kind of check it here really quick, this is the latest, it does appear that maybe tomorrow they're going to go ahead and take a look at this. It looks like the mission, the reconnaissance mission that was there for today, has already been scrapped. So maybe they'll go out there tomorrow if it looks a little bit more interesting. But most of our hurricane models and computer models are indicating an eastward trajectory moving out into the Atlantic and then kind of moving out into the colder waters farther down the road. So the areas that the National Hurricane Center reconnaissance aircraft want to go check out is probably going to be roughly in this area sometime tomorrow if the low indeed still looks like it could develop. So let's go ahead and look at the Gulf of Mexico. One of the features I wanted to point out was not just that low that's out here over the Atlantic Ocean, but there's a bit of a frontal boundary that's kind of draped here across the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico, and it's trapping a lot of this Gulf moisture here over much of South Florida. You may have read in the news that there's been a lot of flooding here over South Florida, and that is something that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks or so, where there was a possibility that all this tropical moisture that's out here over the Caribbean was going to be lifting northward toward the Florida Peninsula, and a lot of folks were aware that significant amounts of rain were going to be coming in. But the other area that the National Hurricane Center is watching is down here in the Bay of Campeche, and again, there's not much out there right now. Most of the action is still out over Central America and into the western part of the Caribbean. We've got a lot of thunderstorm activity that has fired up here over parts of southern Mexico into Central America, Belize, and Guatemala. Actually, this is really good news for these folks. It's been very dry. They've had drought conditions and fires going on over Central America. So getting these tropical rains to roll back in is actually a good thing for those areas. Looking at the Caribbean satellite, it is very quiet out there. We've got a bit of a tropical wave kind of down here over the southern part and another tropical wave that's entering the Caribbean, but the rest of the Caribbean is relatively quiet. But it does appear in some of these visible satellite images at the end here that there might be a little bit of Saharan dust starting to infiltrate parts of the Caribbean Sea. So that would be something that would inhibit development. And as we look out here in the middle part of the Atlantic, we've got a number of tropical waves that are out here. The one that's kind of coming in toward the Leeward and Windward Islands, another one right over here, and there's another one that's out here, and yet another one that's coming off the African coast. But I kind of want to focus on this one out here as the cloudiness has dissipated a little bit more compared to what we saw yesterday, but it still seems like it's a fairly robust tropical wave out here in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean that will continue to drift westward. Bit of Saharan dust here, another tropical wave moving in or moving off the the African coast into the Atlantic. Waters out here in the eastern Atlantic are still a little too cool for development, but as they drift off toward the west and head in over toward the Caribbean Sea, as long as dry air and Saharan dust stays away, it might have a chance for some development, and it's something we'll be watching. So let's focus in on the southern Gulf of Mexico, which is what everybody's talking about and would have the most impact on Acadiana if it were to come about. So we're going to go back in time again and look at the consistency of the different models. So this is what we showed you yesterday when you watched Acadiana weather today on Wednesday. We'll go up a model, and you see there's not much change. We'll go up another model, still really not a lot of change. So a lot of meteorologists and the National Hurricane Center starting to buy in because there's consistency from model run to model run. And the Euro is doing the same thing. And we're going to show you that in just a second. But these are all images for Monday, Tuesday into next week. So it looks like some tropical moisture could come bother us for Father's Day. But if we're going to get any of this tropical moisture, it's more likely going to come in the early part of next week. This is the model run that ran earlier this morning, and this is the one that just finished here a few minutes ago. And if we go back here to the beginning, and I'll just really quickly scroll through all 5 of these images, you can see they're very, very similar. So consistency is something that we look at, and hence the reason why I think the National Hurricane Center is starting to buy in on something possibly developing over the Bay of Campeche early next week. Taking a look at the Euro, looks almost exactly the same as this morning's GFS. We kind of go back and forth, but the Euro does seem to have a little bit more of a closed low, which would indicate perhaps a tropical depression or a tropical storm here over the southern part of the Bay of Campeche. And I will say the last couple of GFS model runs are probably indicating our first named storm as well, which would be Alberto. Again, that all depends on if the 90L that's over the Atlantic, if that one develops first and gets to tropical storm status, it will get the Alberto name. But if that one doesn't, then the one that's out here most likely would get the Alberto name coming up sometime next week. There are a few things that are going against development, and one is shear. We've talked about that when you've got winds at different speeds and different directions above where the tropical system is trying to develop, and it develops on the water right at the surface. But then it has to grow, and if those thunderstorms start to reach this high wind shear that's currently over the northern part of the Gulf of Mexico, you're not going to get anything to develop there. And there's a bit of weaker wind shear now here over the Yucatan Peninsula and the Bay of Campeche, so maybe that's what the computer models are thinking, that there might be a chance that we would see some development. But let's fast forward to early next week at the same time frame that the GFS and the Euro are both indicating at least a tropical depression, but you'll see it on this particular map that even though there is a low pressure area here, there's a ton of wind shear just to the north and a ton of wind shear out here over the Pacific. So, and with its interaction with land, it wouldn't be getting a good chance for any strengthening. So that's why most models are thinking at best a weak tropical storm or maybe a tropical depression. But if the Euro model shows up a little bit better than the GFS model, you can see that the Euro model would be better for us, keeping high pressure over North America and keeping some of the rain away, while the GFS has a weaker ridge of high pressure starting to move off the East Coast, which would bring more of that moisture toward the Louisiana Gulf Coast. So those are the couple of scenarios that we're looking for that particular item. But there's more that we're going to talk about in the GFS, which goes out 16 days, and the Euro, every other run goes out 16 days as well. So they're in agreement that there might be something else out there, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. And why we get a little more concerned, not only is it hurricane season, but our water temperatures have been extreme. Anything in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea would be able to sustain a tropical system with those water temperatures over 27 degrees Celsius, which is that magic number of 80. You can see we're at 30, 29. There's a couple of 31s that are down here in the southern part of the Caribbean Sea, and even over toward the Bahamas, we've got waters of 30 degrees or higher. So you're going 86, 87 on the Fahrenheit scale there. So virtually all of the areas that we normally have development during the early part of the hurricane season would be able to sustain just by water temperature alone. Second thing we look at, and those of you who have been on Acadiana Weather Today's Let's Talk Tropics before are familiar with this map as well. This is the tropical cyclone heat potential, and this measures the water temperatures at the surface and then how far down those 80-degree temperatures go below the water surfaces. And the more of that there is, the more tropical cyclone heat potential there is. So this is Cuba, just for reference, Jamaica right here, and then Central America right here, and then the Louisiana Gulf Coast is up here at the top. And in the Western Caribbean, as well as the Gulf of Mexico, you have tremendous tropical cyclone heat potential, and you really have it all the way out in the Caribbean and the Western Atlantic as well. So if anything would try to develop in these particular areas, there'd be some concern, because if they were able to tap into that heat potential and if they had the right atmospheric conditions on top of that, rapid intensification would be possible. And we've seen that happen many times, especially here with the loop current that's over the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico. I think there's a link in the description. If not, I will add it, a little information about the loop current after this live stream is over. But loop current here during 2005 was responsible for some major increase in intensity of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, and there have been other storms that have been affected by the loop current and that tropical cyclone heat potential. But let's just, for fun, let's go out into La La Land beyond the initial tropical system that we're watching down in the Bay of Campeche. And what you'll notice is a low pressure area spinning its way up toward the Louisiana Gulf Coast. And the end of this loop is Monday, June the 24th. So that would be a week from this coming Monday. So about 10 days or so, 11 days away from this. I will tell you that this is about the 7th or 8th computer model that has now put something in the Gulf of Mexico. We had something here, a landfall here, a couple of landfalls on Louisiana, and then something kind of scooting out here in the west. If you wanted to go back and look at the other models, you can, but they all are indicating at least something trying to pull out of the Caribbean Sea and push into the Gulf of Mexico. And I will tell you, I just looked at the latest Euro model that came down early this morning that goes out this far, and believe it or not, it also has a low pressure area in the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico. Do I think that we're going to be having a hurricane on June the 24th? Can't tell you that just yet, but when you start looking at model consistency, and it is hurricane season, and if we can get the wind shear and the atmospheric conditions to calm down a little bit, I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be additional tropical systems trying to form over the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean, or into the Gulf of Mexico as well. So, as I've been saying many times before, make sure you get prepared now while there is no storminess out there and there are plenty of supplies that are available for everyone to get. And then that way, when we are under the gun and we start to get into the cone and a tropical system is threatening Louisiana, you will have everything you need, and then you can focus on those last minute repairs, then just kind of kick back and wait or put your evacuation plan in place. One thing I did want to remind everyone, later today, there's going to be a great forum down at the Slyman Theater in New Iberia. That's on historic Main Street. The Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, down in New Iberia, will have a forum on getting prepared for hurricane season. A lot of information. I'll be one of many speakers that are going to be there. And they're also going to be having a giveaway there too, perhaps some hurricane supplies. So I know that it's first come, first serve. I also know that it would be one per household, but they've got quite a few of them. And if you want to go down there and check out Parish Prepared, not only will you learn some great stuff on how to get ready for hurricane season, but you might also walk away with some supplies to get you a little jump start on your preparation for 2024's hurricane season. So if you want to join us, that will be at 5:30 at New Iberia's historic Slyman Theater there on Main Street. And I want to thank the folks there, Volunteer Louisiana, the Community Emergency Response Team, and the Iberia Parish Government for putting this together. And I look forward to seeing anyone who wants to join us. Well, if you like Let's Talk Tropics, of course, as I always say, like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on, and please tell your friends. I'm really excited that I crossed over 2,400 subscribers to my channel today. When I started this about a month and a half ago, I was hoping I was going to get 100. and now I'm over 2,400. So I'm really happy about that. And we'll just try to give you a no-nonsense forecast during the morning, a no-nonsense discussion on the tropical weather during the afternoon. And if there's any severe weather that pops up, if you have those notifications turned on, you'll get an alert if we put the live stream on for any severe weather, which I don't think is going to be happening over the next several days. So I hope to see you in New Iberia at 5:30 later on. If not, I hope you'll join me tomorrow morning sometime between 7:30 and 8 for our morning show, Acadiana Weather Today, a short morning chat on the upcoming weather conditions and how they're going to affect your day. Hope you have a great day. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker, and I will see you on Friday.